Alright, moving on to red. First red card we have is Fear of Missing Out. 2 mana, 2/3 enchantment creature. When it enters, discard a card, then draw a card. Delirium. Whenever it attacks for the first time each turn, if you have Delirium, untap target creature. After this phase, there's an additional combat phase. So first off, like 2 mana, 2/3 enchantment creature, discard, draw a card. That's not that bad if you want to do Delirium stuff. And then if you do get Delirium, you can combine this with like Vigilant creatures and just like big things. Maybe you have creatures with attack creatures like the Overlords. I think this card is probably pretty good. I don't know exactly where it goes. It's an interesting design. It's sort of weird. I guess the flavor is like the creatures that aren't attacking are missing out on the second combat. I don't know, but it looks good to me. You know, you can use it in your Mardu Greasefang deck, I guess. I don't know. It's just a discard outlet, reanimator stuff, delirium stuff, beatdown stuff. It seems good. I don't know if it's actually good, to be honest. Just Magic cards are so good nowadays, but this looks appealing to me. I want to try it for sure, and I wouldn't be surprised if this card was just like incredible with a lot of different things. Next up, Clockwork Percussionist, 1 mana, monkey toy artifact creature with haste. It's 1/1. When it dies, exile top card. You may play it until the end of your next turn. So this is just like Oni Cult, Anvil, adjacent, enabler thing. Sack it to Deadly Dispute, sack it to whatever. You can Ensoul Artifact it. It can just beat down for some damage. This is just like a good card that fits into sacrifice style of decks. And it's an artifact, so that's nice for Delirium. Next up, Betrayer's Bargain, 2 mana instant. As an additional cost to cast it, sack a creature, enchantment, or pay 2. And then it deals 5, and if deals 5 to a creature only. And if the creature would die, exile it instead. I don't even know if I should have had this card on my list, but it's fine, right? It's just a removal spell that exiles that might be relevant. I don't know. I'm not sure if you actually want to sacrifice enchantments. Assuming that's something that you do want to do, this card could be good. But it's just a removal spell. Now we have the Red Glimmer, Enduring Courage. I think this is Ogre Battle Driver from like a really old core set. But it is a Glimmer card now and a dog, importantly. So 4 mana, 3/3. Whenever another creature you control enters, it gets +2/+0 and haste. And then when it dies, it comes back to an enchantment. So I don't think this is the type of thing that matters in Standard. But maybe you're getting pest controlled and temporary lockdown and you want to try a different style of like red-white beatdown thing other than Convoke. I think you should just play Convoke because Convoke's kind of busted. But there's the card that's like 5 mana, make 5 1/1s. So you could curve this into that and attack your opponent for 18. Cool card. I don't think that this card is going to see constructed play. But if you like playing weird fringe decks, this is a cool thing to build around. Next is Screaming Nemesis. 3 mana, 3/3 haste. When it's dealt damage, deal that much damage to any other target. So it's like a Boros Reckoner. And then if it deals damage this way to a player, that player cannot gain life for the rest of the game. So if you are playing against the Angel from Domain and they want to kill this, the first trigger will deal 2 to it and they'll gain 2 life. And then you can deal 2 to them. The second one will deal 2 to it, but they won't gain 2 life because they can't gain life for the rest of the game. And then you can deal another 2 to your opponent, and you can ignore their cornucopias, their lightning helix, their Atraxa, their whatever life linkers. So yeah, this card seems pretty good to me. I like 3 out of 3/3 haste with the upside ability is already kind of exciting. And playing a red deck, keeping your opponent from gaining life is obviously relevant. You could combine this with fight spells. You could play like an ill-timed explosion, discarding a giant card to deal a bunch of damage to your opponent's face. This card's sweet. I think it's good. It does have the problem of being like a 3-drop for red decks. where all of the red decks are these like infect slingshot show off decks that can just kill you on turn 3. This doesn't really fit into that plan, but maybe with Pyroclasm and some of the other stuff in this set, you're more incentivized to raise your curve and do some more tricksy stuff, and this could see play because of that. Scorching Dragonfire, reprint, 2 mana instant, deal 3 to a creature or planeswalker. If it dies, exile it. Good card. Role player. Anti-dies trigger. Next, we have Piggy Bank, 2 mana, 3/2, artifact creature. When it dies, make a treasure token. Similar to the monkey, just it can do stuff. I don't think that this card will see play in Constructed, but you could win games with this card. You could lose games to this card. It's fine. I think maybe in 2-year Standard, this is the type of thing that would have a chance to see play. In 3-year Standard, I don't believe in it, but it's fine. It's a reasonable rate. Next up, the Roller Crusher Ride. The source you control would deal non-combat damage to a permanent or player while there are 4 or more card types. Among the cards in your graveyard, it deals double that damage. And then when it enters, it deals X to each of up to X target creatures. So this card's kind of weird. So if I spend 5 mana, I get to deal 2 to 2 creatures, which isn't a good rate. But then I have this enchantment in play that says all of my burn spells deal double damage once I get Delirium. Also, obviously, you can have Delirium when you play it, and then you'll get to deal for 5 mana. You'll get to deal 4 2 times. It kind of scales up well. Like I can't imagine. Like, why would you do this instead of just playing Sunfall, other than because you want to double the damage of your burn spells? So, if this sees play, I assume it's going to be like with burn spells. For the most part, this is probably just a commander card, but it's interesting enough that I decided to put it on the list. Cool flavor, too. Now we have Leyline of Resonance. So this is one of the more controversial cards in the set. I am in the camp that this card is probably really strong. There's some people that think that it's just not worth doing. But it's just 0 mana, and it does things for you. I don't know how else to say it, right? Like the fact that you can put this into play and then just like play any spell that targets your creature and says draw a card means it immediately replaced itself for 0 mana. And also you can just use it to kill your opponent instantly. Like you can play the mouse 1-drop and then put a bunch of double your pump spells or fling it or whatever. You can do so much damage. And like I said, just with anything that says draw a card on it, this just doubles that. So all of your 1 mana cards that say draw a card now say draw 2. You get extra triggers. So one of the things about ley lines that is problematic is that, like, if you're playing a control deck, you're probably going to look at like 10, 12 cards in a game. If you're playing a heroic deck or like an infect deck, you're not going to look at that many cards. You're either going to lose the game or have won the game by like turn 3 or 4. So it's a little bit less problematic that you have these bricks that could be a part of your draw step because you're just looking at less cards. So I don't know. I kind of despise this design. I already commented on the ley lines. There's a lot of designs in Magic where like you're sort of making a card and you don't want it to be good. That's kind of how ley lines feel to me. Where like I think Leyline of the Void and Leyline of Sanctity are reasonable because they're not proactive, but these proactive ley lines are potentially really scary. You've seen it, like the green ley line in Green Devotion's ability to make you mana instead of stopping your opponent's graveyard or stopping your opponent from targeting you, stuff like that. So this card scares me. I hope that it's not good. I think that it is good, but we'll see. We'll see. There's some good tools against aggro in this set, so maybe it ends up just being a brick and not that big of a deal. Now we have Cursed Recording. So 4 mana artifact. Whenever you cast an instant or sorcery spell, put a time counter on Cursed Recording. Then if there are 7 or more time counters on it, remove those counters and it deals 20 damage to you. I love this card. I love that it doesn't say you lose the game. I love that it just deals 20 to you, so you can just like shrug it off. Just like, the killer wasn't strong enough, or the demon in the TV, or whatever the hell this is. I'm too tanky. And then it has tap whenever you cast an instant or sorcery spell. This turn, copy that spell. You may choose new targets for the copy. So the first card I want to talk about with this is Lightning Helix, because of the first line of text. If I just copy like 3 Lightning Helix and gain, I don't know, whatever, it's 6 each time, so 18 life. It doesn't really matter that I'm going to deal 20 to myself. It's very easy to blink this, or you can bargain it away with like a Torch the Tower, so you don't have to worry about that. You can curve this into Pour Over the Pages and Pioneer. So use your Pour, draw a bunch of cards, untap your lands, do it again. You can use it with Alrund's Epiphany to take extra turns. There's a few other cards, I can't remember, but there's been some ideas I've had around this card. It kind of looks like these like 4 mana do nothing cards are difficult to play because you run the risk of just like dying after you spend your 4th turn doing nothing. But if you can ramp into this, you can pair it with like a 1 mana removal spell and then double that removal spell. Like I said, if you're using Lightning Helix, it makes it more likely that you're alive. Yeah, this card's interesting. It's interesting with burn and time walks and card draw and all sorts of stuff. So maybe you could do like some harmless offering stuff too, where you gift this to your opponent right before it pops off. That's funny. Yeah, this is. I think this looks like a bulk card, but I wouldn't be surprised if it ended up being playable. Now we have Chainsaw. Going back to the point I made earlier of I appreciate how they're making equipment and auras better. This is an equipment that's also kind of removal. So 2 mana, when it enters, deal 3 to a creature. And then whenever a creature dies, it gets a rev counter. And then it equips for 3, and anything that it's equipped to gets plus X plus 0, where X is the amount of rev counters. So I don't actually think this card... I said nice things about how they've been buffing equipment. I still don't think that this card is good and constructed. Like, sorcery speed removal is so bad when people are slick shot show-offing you. It takes a while for it to actually matter. It's cool, right? Like, you can sacrifice it to Deadly Dispute, you can blink it with your Yorion, you can Insult Artifact it, all that stuff. I just don't think that that's, like, 2 mana, deal 3 to a creature is that exciting. I hope this card sees play. I think it's a really cool design, but not that excited about it. Alright, next we have Norin, Swift Survivalist, 2/1, Legendary Human, can't block. Whenever a creature you control becomes blocked, you may exile it, and then you can play it the same turn it gets exiled. So, anyone that's played red decks knows what it's like to chump attack and just run your creatures into their thing to get damage. This, you don't have to do that. I can attack with my 3/2/1s, and you can block with your 2/4, and then instead of my creature dying, I just replay it. This card's not that exciting, but it's a human. It has a decent line of text. Like, it is good if you are attacking on the ground into other ground creatures. And so it's legendary too, so maybe Bard class, maybe Mox Amber. Those have been things that people have played in Pioneer in the past. So I put it on the list for those reasons, but it seems like a decent card. Nothing insane, but worth considering. 1 mana cards are good. Next we have Fear of Being Hunted, 3 mana enchantment creature, 4/2 haste, must be blocked. So there are 2 things in this set. I didn't actually look this one up, but I think the first ever 2 mana 3/2 haste is in this set, and it has an upside. And as far as I know, this is the first like 3-drop that has 4 power and haste and doesn't really have any downsides. It's not like a Ball Lightning. It actually has an upside. So I put it on the list because I think that's noteworthy. Like, you could argue it being an enchantment is a downside because it gets naturalized, but it just hits really hard and it stays there. Also, it forces your opponent to block. So maybe your opponent has a 4-drop or a 3-drop that you think is better than your 4/2, and you just want to trade. So you can use it for that. Probably not a constructed playable card, but interesting and does damage. Now, one of the most impactful cards in the set, probably, maybe not. I don't know the last time this card was in standard, maybe like M10 or something, probably over 10 years ago. maybe 14 years ago or whatever. But Pyroclasm, so 2 mana sorcery, deal 2 to all creatures. Very clean, very straightforward. There are Convoke decks in Standard, there are Convoke decks in Pioneer, maybe sometimes there are Convoke decks in Modern, but they already had this card. But yeah, this is just good against token, go wide stuff. Everyone knows what it's like to play against Convoke and not have a sweeper. You're pretty heavily incentivized to be black or white to get a sweeper that deals with small creatures. Now you have a decent one in red, so that's nice. But yeah, this card's great. You can play it in Arclight Phoenix, doesn't kill your Ledger Shredders. You can find it with Picklock Prankster. It's just a good card. One thing I will note is, basically since the printing of Bone Crusher Giant, like half of the 2-drops that get printed that are made for Constructed or whatever have 3 toughness. So like this is not always going to kill the things that you need it to kill. I don't know if you can actually main deck this. Maybe you can main deck it in like the current Standard environment where there's just a lot of like red aggro and Convoke. Hopefully this sort of course corrects the format, and maybe people start getting punished if they play a lot of these, because people start playing more mid-rangey, well-statted creatures. So I'm excited for this one. I think it is a good guy card and not a bad guy card, so I'd like to see a Pyroclasm. And hopefully it's not like too oppressive against token decks like something like Meathook Massacre was. Grab the prize. This is just a Tormenting Voice, but if you discard a non-land, your opponent takes 2. So if you're playing like a weird Madness burn deck in like Pioneer, Pauper's the one I've seen people talk about this card for, but there is like Fiery Temper and Alms of the Veins, I think is the name of it. So there are some like Madness burn things. But yeah, this is just like another Tormenting Voice. Turn Inside Out. This is probably going to go in your Valiant red Leyline decks in Standard. 1 mana for 3 power, and then when your thing dies, you get to Manifest Dread. Not much to say. Now we have the Red Overlord, which is a 6 mana 5/5, pending 4 mana. When it enters or attacks, deal 4 anywhere. So this goes face. It goes after Planeswalkers. It goes after creatures. Kind of an Inferno Titan. You can't split the damage up, but 4 is a lot. Notably, doesn't kill Beza, doesn't kill Archfiend of the Dross, doesn't kill Shieldred. I don't think it kills any of the other Overlords either. So maybe this ends up missing too much for it to be good. But I think it's a fine card. Like, you can use it to shoot down battles. So that's nice. Obviously, like I already said, it's good against Planeswalkers. It also kills your opponent pretty quickly. Like, if you can give this haste, it can deal 8 to your opponent's face and attack for 5. So that's what, 13 damage. But yeah, triggers up the Beanstalk. All the Delirium enchantment stuff. Good card. Next up, Razorkin Needlehead. Red for a 2/2. Has first strike on your turn. And whenever an opponent draws a card, it deals 1 to them. So, small little baby Shieldred. Doesn't gain you life. But yeah, this is just a red aggro card. Again, I think this is like a more traditional red aggro card. I don't think it necessarily fits into the Slick Shot Show Off style of deck. But the first strike plays really well with Monstrous Rage. It's terrifying to block. And if you're playing like, I don't know, if you're playing Treasure Cruise, you probably have a million 1-mana removal spells, so this thing's never going to stay in play, but this is like an Orcish Bowmaster style thing that can punish people for drawing extra cards, so it's a human too. I don't know if this card is incredible, but it does stuff. It has good text box, okay stats. Interesting card, at least. Alright, moving on to the rooms. We have Painter's Studio, which is 3 mana, exile top 2 cards. You may play them until the end of your next turn, or 2 mana, whenever you attacking creatures you control get +1/+0 until end of turn. So, I think the right half is maybe a little bit more appealing than the left half, but the fact that both of these are stapled together, like, rooms are kind of like better adventure cards, where they're just 2 cards, but in the case of rooms, you can do it in whatever order you see fit. So if you're playing a red aggro deck and you play a Monastery Swiftspear, and then you play 2 more Monastery Swiftspears, and then you play your 4th Monastery Swiftspear and your defaced gallery, you can attack for a bunch of damage. And then if you run out of spells, you can use your Painter Studio to draw more cards, trigger more prowess. So again, this kind of falls under the same problem of a lot of cards where, like, in 3-year standard, you just have so many options that you're probably not going to play a card like this. But I think it's worth remembering it exists if you want this style of card. And then we have Charred Foyer and Warped Space. So this is just like an outpost siege for anyone who remembers that. It says at the beginning of your upkeep, exile top card you can play it this turn. And then for 6 mana, once each turn you may pay 0 rather than pay the mana for a spell that you cast from exile. So for the most part, this is like a Urbrass Forge style like pivot, where if your opponent is temporarily lockdowning you, you can have some permanent that can help you win the game. 4 mana is probably too much, but red card draw is appealing. Maybe there's some fancy stuff you can do with the 6 mana mode, but if you're already spending 6 mana to get your spells to be cheaper, who cares? Because you spent 6 mana, it doesn't really matter that they're free anymore. And that is it for red. Make sure to like and subscribe. And we are on to black, I think, is the final color. So almost done with the monocolored stuff. So thank you guys, and I will see you in the next video.